speaking to me very clearly about rivers and waters. And I didn't know that this town is built on a river, or around a river. And I felt God speak to me out of 2 Kings and chapter 2, where it talks about the city is pleasant, but the water is bad and the land is unfruitful. And I felt God wanting to speak to this church about changing the flavor of the water in the city. And the prophet calls for a new bowl. He doesn't just call for any old bowl. He calls for a new bowl to put some salt in it.
I feel that we've, in many ways, only just got started. I feel that God's spoken again. He has even recently through His Word and through the Holy Spirit and through prophecy that's come from outside the church, saying, go for it, saying, come on, these things are still in place. This is still the call of God, and there's more. And so we're going to keep running into these things.
I feel like God is going to even change the feel of this church. God's going to change the way things are even done, just even in every facet of church ministry, from worship right through just to the literal feel of the church.
And what we want to do is to build right, to build wise, so that the temperature, the heat can be gradually increased and turned up. The heat of God can continue to come on us as a church. And so what we're doing, the way that we're building, it's not necessarily rational, it's not necessarily always logic, it's not necessarily always according to sort of good worldly practice at all, but it's about being directed by God, directed prophetically, keeping in step with the Holy Spirit. Leading a church is a bit like being an architect. Together we're putting up a building, and we have to look at the blueprint, and it's not a worldly blueprint, it's God's blueprint. It's a blueprint, a plan from heaven. And we're not building with bricks and mortar, but we're building with people, and people go in different places. People change, structures change, in order that the building, the house of God, may go up.
Then I felt God speak to me very clearly about this building, that God would call you to be in a place of faith, that this building would be a launch pad into another building, into the city itself. And I could see a double-story building in the city almost, and it's like they had big shop front windows and doors were open, and there was a real busyness about this place. And I saw this meeting hall inside of it, and I felt God say, I want you to know you're not going to be meeting here for much longer, because I'm going to move you into the city near the river.
Not all prophetic words are automatic. And so we can't just sit around. We don't just pray and think, oh, that's good, brilliant, God will do that at some point. No, it's not always the case. That God reveals His heart. God puts before us His blueprint. He gives us an invitation. He speaks His truth into it, and He calls us forward. And therefore we have to take action. As we've been looking at recently on a Sunday morning, we have to step into our position rather than stay in our current condition. We have to lift up our heads and walk into the things, knowing that God has says these are a reality. Come into them and experience them and see them happen.
And God would say, I'm going to cause you to bring the multicolored aspect of my kingdom, and God is going to begin to change even the demographics of your church. I see many different colors of people, many different languages. God is going to begin to mix it up in what He's going to do.
I feel that over the past couple of years especially, there's been quite a lot of underground stuff, and we've begun to see things coming to the surface a little bit more. And so 2009 is going to be a year where we begin to build on top. We begin to make more structural changes. We begin to make changes that are going to be more visible. You could seeing this house of God going up. So what are we going to do? What are the areas we're going to focus on next year? How are we going to bring about more structural change? How are we going to build this city, this house up? Well, there's 4 areas that I want to mention. There'll be many other things, but these are 4 biggies. The first thing we're going to be focusing on is the gospel and the Holy Spirit. We've begun to look at that in the latter part of the year. We're going to develop that. We're going to be looking at the gospel of the kingdom, how it applies to our lives, what this kingdom is, and we're also going to be pressing in increasingly for things of the Holy Spirit, spiritual gifts, knowing God's presence amongst us. These things are so important, and we're going to be pulling this particularly into our Sunday mornings in terms of preaching, but also other ways of beginning to change and break things up a bit. One other big area that's in connection with this is we're going to be making changes to our children's work as well, really because we want to bring the children into line with what we're doing across the whole church, and so we want to begin to teach the children and to establish some of these things within the children's work.
There'll be a new sense of the Spirit coming, a new sense. It's almost like there needs to be an empowering of Spirit things. There needs to be an empowering of Spirit activity. It's almost like you've been doing things, trying things here, doing this, doing that, but it hasn't brought the kind of fruit that you need. And I feel it's because God's saying, I'm pouring salt today into the river, and there's going to be much fruit from this season forward.